Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, our recap of last night's action, rather inaction, in the main event of the top-ranked show, the super lightweight title fight between Teofimo Lopez, the champion, and Jermaine Ortiz, the challenger. Jermaine Ortiz, who seemed to have the right idea in the first half of the fight, but perhaps grew too comfortable in the second half. In the first half of the fight, I gave Jermaine Ortiz most of the first half. In the first half of the fight, Jermaine Ortiz was creating space and getting off punches, walking Teofimo into punches, walking him into combinations. He was doing all right in the first half, using his height, using his length, moving around, and throwing punches. Emphasis on throwing punches. That's the glaring disparity for Ortiz from the first half into the second. In the first half, he got off to a strong start and he was fighting the right fight. At one point, out of frustration in the first half, you see Teofimo Lopez backpedal. He gets tired of chasing Ortiz around the ring and he decides he's going to backpedal, back himself into a corner to try to set a trap. He was trying to get Ortiz to come to him, and when he did, Ortiz got the better end of it. Ortiz got the better end of the exchange all throughout the first half. Whenever they did trade, it seemed like Ortiz was getting the better end of it, but that was in the first half. In the second, his output greatly diminished. He was just shuffling from one end of the ring to the other without mounting anything in terms of offense.
He wasn't.
Not that what we were getting from Teofimo Lopez in the second half qualified as effective aggression or clean punching, clean punches. He still looked limited. He still looked lost in the sauce, unable to pin down Jermaine Ortiz, but Jermaine Ortiz wasn't getting much done either. The difference in between the first half of the fight and the second half of the fight is you actually got output from Ortiz in the first half, whereas in the second half, he was happy just surviving. He was happy to just move from one end of the ring to the other, and I've said it a million times. You don't win rounds doing that shit. I don't know why some fighters and some fight fans have it in their head that it's enough to not get hit. That just the act of not getting hit should be enough to win you the round, when the old saying goes, hit and not get hit. Hit and not get hit. Jermaine Ortiz, in the second half of the fight, he was leaving out the first part. He's not boxing smart or fighting smart. He's fighting half of a fight. That shit didn't work for Lara with Canelo. That shit didn't work for Rigondeaux with Casemiro. That shit didn't work for Conceição with Valdez. And last night, in the second half of the fight, that shit didn't work for Ortiz with Lopez. It's not gonna work. What are you expecting? That you're gonna get more consideration from the judges than he is? He's the champion. You're the challenger. There's a thin line between creating space to set a trap and retreating. And the centerpiece for both combatants, whether you're the guy moving forwards or the guy moving backwards, is landing punches. You're both assigned to land punches. You're not just in there to avoid getting hit. You've got to do some hitting of your own. Otherwise, you're just retreating. You can't hold the center of the ring. You're being backed into the ropes, shuffling from one end to the other because you don't want to engage. Ortiz started off all right, but he gave it away. He gave it away in the second half. That's what I think. Then why is everybody piling on Lopez, and why are so many people saying that he should have lost? Because the only rounds that Lopez won were rounds that Jermaine Ortiz gave away. In the first half and the second half, Lopez looked bad. Whereas in the first half, Ortiz was doing all right. He was fighting his fight, and he was winning. It's the second half that he gave away, but in the first half, he was looking good. Whereas Teo, he didn't look good in the first half, and he didn't look good in the second, but the only reason he was winning so many rounds in the second half was because of how little Jermaine Ortiz was doing, what little offense he mounted. Most of the time, he was just moving around or pivoting. Happy to fluster Teofimo with that, not doing much scoring or landing that many scoring blows or eye-catching shots. I don't think Jermaine created enough clear separation between himself and the champion, who got about as much consideration as you would expect in this situation, while exposing Teofimo's limitations. I say it all the time, Teofimo hanging back, shifting his weight onto his back foot and setting up a counter against an advancing opponent is not the same as Teofimo coming forward and stalking his opponent, attempting to walk him down. On the back foot, he's all right. He's He's a skilled counterpuncher, but on the front foot, he doesn't diversify his offense enough.
It's the same deficiency you saw in Regis Prograis in both the Devin Haney and Danielito Zorrilla fights.
And it's the same deficiency Gervonta Davis's matchmakers work hard to disguise, always getting him guys that are going to step into their jab, always getting him guys that are going to come forward instead of moving lateral or moving backwards. It's the same thing with Teofimo. These are all boxer punchers that rely heavily on counter-punching. They're strong, and they're fast, and they're good on the back foot, but not that good on the front foot.
They're more vulnerable on the front foot.
What they all have in common is that they're short, stumpy fighters. They're often the shorter, stumpier fighter in the ring that doesn't throw all that many punches in a round, and they're relying on single shots, single punches, big ones, to score a big knockout.
And if they do string a sequence of punches together, it's all fastballs. It's all power shots.
In a sentence, all three of these fighters are very good at catching the other man coming in, but when they have to be the man coming in, when they have to move forward, they don't diversify their offense enough, and that's why they're vulnerable. That's why Teofimo, that's why he looked bad in both halves of yesterday's fight.
And that's why so many people think he lost.
Looked bad. He looked bad in both halves of the fight, but in the second half, he was able to pick up more rounds because Jermaine was giving them away. He just wasn't doing enough. And I think that Teofimo is very fortunate to have walked away with that decision, though I don't expect him to improve. In his own mind, he made off like a bandit, and whatever he's doing, no matter how bad he looks, he's telling himself, hey, I won. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
When he needs to. These are the same deficiencies we saw in both the Kambosos fight and the Sandor Martin fight.
The outcome ruffled a lot of people's feathers, because if nothing else, most would agree that Teofimo looked bad, and some people think he looked bad enough that he should have lost. That's how some people feel, not everyone though. Different strokes for different folks. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato. You look bad today. Maybe you'll do better tomorrow?
Maybe.
Was a little bit surprised to see that one of the strongest finishers in the welterweight division and the sport today, Terrence Crawford, he thought that Ortiz did enough. He thought that Ortiz won, though at the same time, he may have an axe to grind with Teofimo, given what Teofimo's been saying about him. So you have to factor that into the equation. Former champion Ishe Smith, he thinks the opposite. He thinks Ortiz didn't do enough. He said, back in the day, you used to have to beat the champion to take his belt. I have no idea how Ortiz can take a champion's belt fighting like this. He only engages when Teo engages. You can't fucking win like that. That's not effective boxing, and my God, Tim Bradley must not like Teo at all.
Yeah, Tim Bradley was letting Teo have it during the broadcast, highlighting that Teofimo doesn't know how to cut off the ring. He's following the opponent in a straight line.
Instead of cutting off the ring, cutting off Jermaine Ortiz's exits so he can pin him down in a corner once he gets there to unload some hard shots. Teo really doesn't know how to cut off the ring. That much is true, though the idea that just sidling along the ropes is enough to win you a round, well, I tend to agree with Ishe. I tend to agree with Ishe Smith's perspective. I told y'all this shit was gonna be a UD. You can't win a fight running like that and not engaging whatsoever. You know, this is pugilism, this is prize fighting. It's a boxing match, you understand?
Boxing.
A boxing match.
Boxing.
Not a frustration match. It's not enough to just frustrate your opponent by sidling along the ropes from one turnbuckle to the next. No, it's not a frustration match.
What did I tell you? What do I always tell you? That fucking shit doesn't work. It didn't work for Lara with Canelo. It didn't work for Rigondeaux with Casemiro. It didn't work for Conceição with Valdez. And last night, it didn't work for Ortiz with Lopez. You have to do more. You're the challenger.
Don't recall any era of boxing aside from this one where so many fighters and so many fight fans had it in their head that you can sidle along the ropes all night, shuffling from one turnbuckle to the next, and that's supposed to win you the round? Is that what passes for defense and a defensive specialist these days? I remember in previous eras and the defensive specialists from previous eras, they didn't spend all night on the outside. They weren't trying to. You're talking about Andre Vard, Bernard Hopkins, James Toney, Pernell Whitaker. These were the defensive specialists of their era, and they didn't spend all night sidling along the ropes. No, they stayed in the pocket.
Slipping, bobbing, rolling with punches, riding punches, weaving under punches, countering punches, all in the pocket.
Of course, there were moments where they used lateral movement. Of course, there were moments where they created space, but they didn't spend the whole goddamn round doing that, the whole goddamn night doing that. Some portion of the round has to go to engaging, landing punches, the centerpiece for both guys. Whether you're the aggressive guy coming forward or the defensive guy moving lateral, the centerpiece for the both of yous is punches landed. You have to land punches. Can't treat that aspect of the game like it's a fucking leap year, like it's something you just occasionally do. You're just occasionally landing 1 or 2 punches in a 3-minute round. 3 if we're lucky.
As many times as you see that minimalist approach to boxing fail on the big stage, as many times as that happens, some people, they just don't get it.
Creating space is part of the game. Of course it is, as well as managing the distance. But there's a thin line between creating space to set a trap and retreating, outright retreating. And if what you're doing most of the round is moving from one end of the ring to the next...
Oh, I see. I understand. You're making him miss punches while he's coming forward. But what punches are you landing? What the fuck are you doing? Which goes back to what I just told you. The centerpiece for both guys in the ring, the focus, has to be landing punches.
When you're sidling on the outside, for as long as you're on the outside, what you're communicating to the judges, what you're communicating to the audience, most of them, is you don't want to throw punches. You don't really want to land punches. It's not safe. So you're minimizing the exchanges, staying outside of the pocket. You can't hold the center of the ring, which is why your back is against the ropes.
You're already economic. You're already not throwing that much, so you can't be landing that much. And what are you telling yourself? That because you landed 1 or 2 decent ones in a 3-minute round,
spent the vast majority of it taking a tour of the turnbuckles while you're on your figure skates, you figure that's going to win you the round when you're the challenger and he's the champion.
Okay.
Good luck.
Godspeed.
That strategy is tantamount to a minimalist approach to boxing that won't win you the fight. Because are you even fighting when you're staying on the outside for that amount of time, that duration of a round? Are you even fighting? Are you even trying to fight?
The surefire way to win a round is to land more punches than your opponent. Get off more shots and land more shots than your opponent, whether you're the aggressor or the defender. That has to be the centerpiece.
Not how many times you made him miss. How many times did you land? How many times did you land punches? That's a better way of winning a round than what I saw yesterday. So I'm not at all broken up that Ortiz didn't get the decision. Teofimo didn't look good, but Jermaine...
This ain't track and field. This is boxing.
Just in keeping with the theme of all things super lightweight, Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia have struck a deal to fight April 20th in Las Vegas for Haney's Junior Welterweight Championship, sources tell ESPN. Haney lands another marquee fight, his biggest yet, as he continues his star climb while Garcia lands his first title shot. And even now I'm still skeptical. Even now I'm still cynical. Ryan is really going to go through with this. The guy who not only 2 fights ago got knocked out by Gervonta Davis, 2 fights later, he wants to fight Devin Haney. He's going to lose this fight. He's not a finished product. He's not put together.
He's only had Derek James in his corner for 1 fight. He's still breaking in a new trainer, still trying to adopt a new base style. You saw him experimenting with a shoulder roll.
Still experimenting at this stage in his career. You saw that in the Duarte fight.
Yeah.
Trying to adopt a new base style.
Yeah.
He even has one. Ryan has the look of a boxer puncher. If he's trying to be anything, he's trying to be that. That's why he was able to catch Javier Fortuna coming in.
Oscar Duarte, Francisco Fonseca, he's got speed and he's got power.
Though he's not put together. He's not all the way there. He has the look of a boxer puncher. Still rough around the edges. Still crude in some areas. Whereas Devin Haney's a pure boxer. And it just so happens that pure boxers have a tactical advantage over boxer punchers.
Ryan's a boxer puncher, or he's trying to be. That doesn't mean he's the same level of boxer puncher as a Gervonta Davis, the same level of boxer puncher as Teofimo or Regis Prograis. He's not on the same level as those guys, but that's where he's trying to get to. That's what he's trying to be.
What he's trying to be. At his very best, he can set up a knockout counter. He's fast enough and sharp enough, strong enough to set it up if he can catch the other guy coming in, but that's not Devin, and that's not what Devin is going to do. He's not going to close the distance. He's going to maintain it and keep it behind the lead hand, behind the jab.
You want to catch him in between a combination, but he's not going to throw combinations.
No.
He's going to throw singles. Single jabs from a safe distance, managing the distance between you and him. You won't get the opportunity to land a counter hook like you did with Fonseca,
Fortuna, or Duarte. You're not going to be able to catch him coming in because he's not trying to come in. He's trying to keep distance between you and him. I don't see it any other way.
Devin beats him. Devin beats Teofimo, too.
Oh yeah, he beat Teofimo. I've always had him beating Teofimo for the same reason he just beat Regis Prograis. Because a boxer puncher, a counter puncher that relies heavily on counter punching, you won't get the opportunity to counter him.
Pure boxer like Devin, you can't catch him coming through the front door, busting through the front door. That's not what they do. They manage the distance at which the fight is being fought behind the jab. Thus, it's going to be on you to get close to him.
Regis Prograis couldn't do it. I don't think Teofimo would be able to do it. You saw what he looked like coming forward yesterday, trying to walk his man down. I believe Devin Haney would fight a better version of the fight that Jermaine Ortiz fought. A better version. Because Jermaine Ortiz had the right game plan, but executed it poorly. At least in the second half. Whereas Devin would stay on the outside too, behind his jab. But he'd let go of that jab more. That'd be the difference. He'd let go of that jab more, land that jab more. He'd stay on the outside, but he wouldn't be on his bike the whole time. He'd be taking a half step back to keep distance.
Which isn't running.
You'd see more pivots from Devin to prevent from being backed into the ropes. You'd see him pivot more, whereas Jermaine was primarily just backpedaling from one end of the ring to the other. He couldn't hold the center of the ring. I believe Devin would. Landing punches all the while, landing punches while he does it. I believe that Devin Haney, stylistically, is all wrong for Teofimo Lopez. He'll beat Ryan. Most people will pick him to beat Ryan, but I believe he would beat Teofimo as well. He'd slice up his face with that jab.
You kind of wonder that the Lopez people don't know that. They don't seem to push all that hard for that fight with Devin Haney. They don't really seem to be pushing for that.
You have to wonder what Teofimo Lopez means to do now, since he got to stay champion. It's very fortunate. We know what Devin's about to do, at least we think we know. He's supposed to be fighting Ryan.
He'll beat Ryan Garcia.
I think he'll beat Ryan Garcia, and I'm a bit surprised that talks have gotten as far along as they have gotten. He'll beat Ryan, and then afterwards, maybe he can settle affairs with Teofimo Lopez, who still is reigning WBO champion, at least for the time being. I've got Devin in that fight. Not only does Devin take Teo to school, I think he pays his tuition.